Greetings and welcome to another River Radio Sports Central podcast, powered by our friends at NovaCare Rehabilitation. Alongside Matt Varney from 103.5 ESPN, I am Darren Kinnard. And Matty, we are in the midst of the postseason run for the winter sports, and we'll get to that in a minute. But we've got some off-season football news in the area with Heron hiring a new head coach, Nathan Lieber.
Yeah, and I love the coaching carousels that go on around here. It's always fun, but sometimes you get names that you're either not expecting or that you don't know too well. I don't know Nathan very well, but I know that he's very well respected around the Carterville area, obviously, being a graduate from that area. Another young head coach for Heron, but they feel like they've got it right this time. And obviously no disrespect to Hunter Shockley by any means, but they feel like they've got it right here because you look at the resume that Lieber brings, and not really, Casey Westfield we know from around these parts, but Tri-Valley, Lincoln. Lincoln hasn't done fantastic in the past 10 years, but they go up against some amazing competition, so that's going to be experience that he uses. And then Tri-Valley is just a perennial powerhouse.
Right.
I'm actually friends with, well, I don't know if I call friends. We're in the same baseball league. We're rivals in a fantasy baseball league. But I'm in the same Dynasty Baseball League as their head coach, and so I got to talk to him a little bit after it was announced that Lieber was being hired, and yeah, he had only great things to say about him. So I believe that this is going to be a good hire for Heron. And
it's a situation where he's going to be able to come in and, you know, the hard part is for the players to have yet another head coach in it. But you're hoping that if you're Heron, that this is our guy and this is the guy that's going to do the things that are going to build the program over the next several years and not just a 1 or 2 year deal, because there is no 1 or 2 year fix in high school football.
There is not. It starts at the bottom, and when you have a new guy come in, it's basically you're throwing away almost everything that's been done down at the 4th, 5th grade level and saying we got to start from the beginning again. And so it's unfortunate that it's happened. It'll be their third head coach in as many years, but they feel like they've got somebody that they can rely on and that they can, plug in there for hopefully several years. And that's another theme I've noticed with Heron. With Taylor Perry, young guy, they thought they had their guy for the next several years. He was on the track to get the program on the right track, and then for whatever reason decided to step away last spring. And then Hunter Shockley comes in last year, does the best that he can. They decided to go a different direction, and so now they think that they've got another young guy, but they hope that this one is going to stick. And, if it sticks with a 27-year-old, you could be talking about a guy that could be around for 40, maybe even 50 years.
Definitely. And so that's the off-season football news. Now let's shift gears and talk about the postseason. This is a big weekend. You have the girls basketball regionals start on Saturday with the quarterfinals, and then we've got girls bowling sectionals. Our local teams are at Mount Vernon, right. And then the boys wrestling individual sectionals. 1A is at Carterville, and then the 2A wrestlers have to go all the way to Lincoln.
And Lincoln's quite a trip, without doubt. But this is, it's one of those weekends that we talked about in past weeks of just, this is when you love it. It's kind of like, September, October for the professional sports leagues. Everything's going on all at once. This is that weekend for us. Of course, boys basketball not in postseason play, but for some people it is postseason play for Friday, Saturday this week, and for others, it's getting ready for that. So it still feels very much like everybody's playing at the highest level, competing at the highest level that they could be at this moment in time.
And then for boys, the news this week is about the postseason. The seeding came out. We're recording on Friday morning as usual, so the seeding came out yesterday. The pairings will come out later this afternoon, and we'll go through some of the pairings or not the pairings, but the seedings in the 1A subsectional that feeds into Cobden. Your top 4 seeds are Waltonville, Oakville, Woodlawn, and New Athens, with Christopher, the 5 seed, who is a regional host. Marissa Coulterville is the 7 seed as a regional host. Steelville sandwiched in between there is the 6th. Waterloo-Gibault is the 8th. Now, this is a subsectional that has all 16 teams, so everybody's going to play a quarterfinal game, right, which will be next Monday, the 24th. But we were just talking back in the back before we came in just about the fact that there's going to be some adjustments due to travel and so we may see some unconventional matchups and the things that make me shudder, like a 10 seed hosting, which that should not happen, but it could because of the way the travel's set up.
Yeah, without a doubt. And we look at also just travel for other regionals as well. I'm looking at specifically subsectional B, which Murfreesboro's in, but I was talking just a couple weeks ago about, it was looking like Harrisburg was probably going to get that 3 seed, and I had said to someone earlier this week even, someone is probably not going to be happy with wherever their assignment ends up being, because Harrisburg would probably rather go to Hamilton County, but Murfreesboro would rather not go, which is they were kind of locked into the 2 seed at that point. They'd rather not go to Hamilton County. They'd rather go to AJ, and that's the exact reality that's here now, and someone is going to end up unhappy, but that's how this always plays out, that you seed them, and then you go ahead and say, okay, so where are they going now? And so it sometimes leads into some interesting travel situations that people aren't happy with.
Well, and the important thing to note here is that the only thing that's guaranteed is that 1 and 4 will be together, right, and 2 and 3 will be together if or as long as there's not issues with who is hosting.
Right.
And so in this scenario, in the 1A with the 5 and the 7 hosting, they can go wherever they want to with the seeds. But, it's unlikely that a team like Norris City, they're going to make them go to the Marissa Regional,
right.
So, again, so there'll be some things that shake out. On the other side, subsectional B, Goreville is the top seed. Then you've got Meridian, Crab Orchard, and Galatia as the 2, 3, and 4, with Crab Orchard and Goreville your host. So there's a situation where you have 1 and 3 are hosting, and that's perfect.
Perfect.
1 and 4 will be together, so that means that Galatia and Goreville will be together, and then Meridian will have to go to Crab Orchard, and then you're going to have to play the 3 seed on their home floor in a potential regional final.
Yeah, Bobcats are probably the only one that isn't saying that's perfect, honestly. And I could understand, especially because that's a trip first and foremost. Not saying that they'd probably want to go to Goreville, but nonetheless, it's a trip that they have to make, and it's not like Crab Orchard is a slouch either.
Right.
So giving them kind of a quote-unquote home advantage will be tough for Meridian when they end up in that matchup, if they end up in that matchup. You got to get to there first. But nonetheless, it'll be a good regional title game if that's truly what it ends up being with Crab Orchard and Meridian. But, yeah, Meridian probably sitting there being like, man, you got to be kidding me.
On the other side, in the subsectionals that feed into the Red Hill sectional, we look at subsectional B first. Dietrich, the number 1 seed, but Weber is the 2 seed with Edwards County, the 3, Altamont, the 4. Your regional hosts are Weber and South Central, who is the 7 seed. So there will be some adjustments with the brackets and the seedings, because obviously the 2 and the 7 are both hosts, so that won't be a matchup there. But it looks like it will be Weber and Edwards County in the same regional, and that's going to be at Weber.
Yeah, that should be pretty interesting. Edwards County has had an interesting season, without a doubt. They've been fairly successful this season. But Weber probably goes in probably the favorite in that regard. And, I mean, they've got the star power with Nathaniel Marlowe behind them. So, but that'll be an interesting potential matchup right there.
And to me, as a numbers guy, when you look at it, there's only 15 teams in that subsectional. So as the 2, Weber gets an extra game, and so that looking at the record watch and things of that nature. So Marlowe gets an extra game, and against it's going to be against one of the lower seeds. So you would expect him to have a big day there.
What do you think?
Couple teams to kind of keep an eye on, not in the top 4. North Clay as the 5 seed. Last night they beat Fairfield by 22. And they beat Dietrich, the number 1 seed here last week. So that's a team that's red hot. And as a Kinmaniyama guy, that's hard for me to admit and to acknowledge. And then Christ Our Rock Lutheran is the 6th seed, and they're the ones that got out of this whole sectional last year. And even though it was a loss, it got my attention that they played a single-digit game last week against Althoff.
Right, without a doubt. North Clay, like you mentioned, they're getting hot at the right time. So don't be surprised if you see them go ahead, and they're a little bit out of the region in terms of if you're listening on the FMs, but in terms of River Radio Sports Central, absolutely recovering them. And there's ones that we're watching without a doubt. They have an interesting situation right now where they're peaking at the right time. Will they be able to take that into it? Christ Our Rock Lutheran last year, I remember, they kind of snuck up on me a little bit because they had kind of a ho-hum regular season a little bit. They did good, but it wasn't as I would expect from a super sectional team. And then all of a sudden they were just blowing through everybody. And you got to remember that they're playing in a Metro League also.
Well, and Christ-Our Rock had been so good the year before,
Yes.
unbeaten in the regular season. Several of those guys had graduated, and so you weren't really sure. And then there were some upsets in the regionals. St. Anthony got beat in the regional final, and St. Anthony was the sectional host. And so now that opens the path. It just shows you how things can really unfold. But I think that they're a team that certainly going to do some things. So let's go to the Carterville sectional. We've talked about it. Subsectional A, the subsectional of death. Althoff is the number 1 seed. Bree Central gets the 2. Columbia the 3. Pinckneyville is the 4. Carlisle and Chester are your 2 hosts. Carlisle's the 5 seed, but then you got Nashville at 6, who is as hot as anybody in the region. Mater Dei's at 7, Westland's at 8, then it's Sparta, Chester, DuQuoin, and Redbud. Sparta's sitting there pushing 20 wins as the 9 seed. So, this is truly, again, we've talked about this for weeks, that the regional semifinals are going to be crazy. I don't think, and again, just, my opinion, when you look at it, I don't think travel's going to be a big deal. So I think that the seeds are going to hold.
Yeah.
And if that does, your regional semifinals, Westland and Althoff, Mater Dei and Central, Nashville and Columbia, and then Pinckneyville is going to get Carlisle at Carlisle, and Carlisle's already beaten them there this year. And so, and again, that's mine. If the seeds hold, we'll be interested to see how that plays out this afternoon when the pairings are released. But my goodness, it's crazy.
Well, and also want to mention Chester. They're sitting at 500 right now. They get to host a regional, and they're in such a deep subsectional here that, are they going to come out of it? Probably not. But they're at 500 and they're hosting a regional. They've had a tough season, but they've played a lot of good teams. Now they get to be on their home floor. They might be able to surprise some people. Maybe they don't win a regional title, but they might pop somebody that you expect to beat them, because again, it's on Chester's home floor. So that's a very interesting subsectional that I'm looking at right there, that we've been saying it all year long, but it is such a deep subsectional.
Right.
Pinckneyville is the 4 seed, by goodness. Now, granted, Althoff deserves it. They've got all the athletes to be at number 1. But when you look at it, if you remove them, still it's Central, Columbia, then Pinckneyville. Pinckneyville is such a good team, and they only managed to be at the 3-4 spot in anyone's mind here.
Well, and Central beat Columbia Tuesday night that last game before the seeding. And so you wonder, would that have been 2-3 the other way had Columbia won that game? Columbia is a team that maybe struggled a little bit early. They don't have quite a shiny record as Pinckneyville, but I think when you look at the strength of schedule, that's probably what gives Columbia the nod at the 3.
Oh, without a doubt. That is absolutely why. Their strength of schedule might be a little bit better, and so people look at it and they're like, yeah, probably. And then, also just the fact that they played, and then polls were submitted the next day that, some people might have already had them filled out and didn't even care about what happened that Tuesday night. They should have, but I guarantee you that there was a couple that just said, no, this is what we're going with, and that's that.
And then when you go to the other side, Benton is the top seed, no surprise. Murfreesboro, the 2 seed. Harrisburg, the 3. I think that's what we kind of had thought would be the 1, 2, 3. And then it was going to be, I think you could pick it out of the hat who was going to be next. Right. Carterville is playing well, down the stretch. And I think that when you look at the teams that were in the mix there, and they had beaten Vienna. I believe they had beaten Massac County, and so they own the head-to-head matchups against the other team. So Carterville gets the 4. Your 2 regional hosts are AJ, the 7 seed, and Hamilton County, the 8 seed. So it's going to be just about where it ends up juggling the travel the most. Benton and Carterville are going to be together. Murfreesboro and Harrisburg are going to be together. What's interesting is that in each of those, geography helps one and not the other in each of those setups.
Yeah, without a doubt. And in terms of also Carterville, it was I was talking with somebody last night, and I said it makes a lot of sense that Carterville gets there because, they have the head-to-head against Vienna twice in a tournament and outside of a tournament setting. And then, Massac County, they have that as well. So it makes perfect sense that they're sitting there at the 5, even though they maybe not have the more spectacular record that Vienna has. They're 18-10, Carterville's 14-12, but Carterville's hitting it at the right time, and they had that head-to-head that, people are sitting here being like, well, Carterville's revving up, and they have that head-to-head, so it made perfect sense but they're going to have a dragon to slay if they want, and probably have to go a lengthier way than they would like.
Well, and they've certainly played Benton twice already,
yeah.
and so it's not an unfamiliar foe, and so you have that. But now the bigger discussion, and folks on the other side are going to be going, look, why do we have these 8 teams that if you were to seed the whole sectional complex, Benton's probably 4-5 with Pinckneyville,
Probably,
and Murphy's probably 8.
Probably,
and
when you look at it all, yeah.
When you look at that, and so then I think it becomes, do we need to be seeding the entire sectional, or do we leave it alone? Because it's a similar problem on the girls' side in 2A. It's just not quite as deep.
Right.
But, again, I know there are those that are in huge support of seeding the sectional complex, but the problem becomes that makes for some long trips during the week.
It does, and it's a bit of an anomaly. I know it's happened in recent years also, but it's not like it's going to happen every single year. It will eventually even out. But I can see the argument also, but it will then, it creates a lot more issues. And I feel like that's a beast you don't want to touch. You open that box, and then, oh no, we're traveling to Columbia when or wherever,
right?
Or rather Carlisle, I mean. But you're traveling to Carlisle, and you're Anna Jonesboro or somebody,
Right.
They wouldn't be, but you get what I'm saying.
Sure.
Just it creates bigger issues. That do you really want to open that box just so you can, for a couple years, have a perfect looking sectional bracket? I don't know that you really do.
And you had years where that regional, you would end up, in the old days, kind of the Clinton County, Washington County, where you'd have Nashville, Central, Mater Dei, especially in the 2-class system where all of them were in the same regional. You got 3 in the top 10 or 15 in the state, and you've got 2 potential state contenders at home before the regional's over. So I think that if you were to do that, I think there's a couple things that would need to be in place. I think you would have to come up with 4 centralized locations to host.
Yeah.
And those would have to be the host. There wouldn't be the rotation, and that's good and bad. But when you look at the way some of these regionals are, like in 3A in the girls, you've got one in Olney and you've got one in Triad or one in Highland, whatever it is. And so there's no middle ground when you've got teams. And so I think it's possible. And the other thing that I think that you would have to protect. When I say protect, the top 8 seeds would need to go where they need to go.
Yes.
1 and 8, 2 and 7, 3 and 6, and then if you need to fill in 9 through 12 or 16 or 24, if you seed the whole sectional, then you fill those in with the travel.
Well, and I mean, I look at just football in the complete opposite situation, and people complain about the travel and stuff, which is the thing that everyone's trying to always figure out. And I kind of have a similar. Let's do a regionals type of situation is my argument. We talk about the divisions all the time. We can keep our conferences, but have the first 2 rounds, 1A through, it would be 6A basically, because 7A, 8A is Chicagoland. But you could do divisional rounds in the first 2 rounds, and then divisional playoffs basically. But at the same time, then you have other issues that crop up that people tell me about. And it's truly just then you have maybe the 2 best teams in the state going head-to-head and stuff. So there's always going to be an issue. It's just, which one do you want? Do you want the travel issue? Do you want the potential state championship being decided in a first-round matchup?
Right.
How do you want to decide it? And that's how there's no easy answer.
Well, and then you have those in football that are trying to get it seeded 1 through 32.
Yeah, that can't be possible.
And I just don't think that that's ever going to be the deal. No, I just don't think you can do that. And so, again, when you go back to football, they used to do it by quadrants, and then it's by 16, and that seems to be a little more equitable. Look, we've seen in 7A and 8A that 1 through 32 does not guarantee you the top teams getting through.
Correct. I
mean, we ended up with like a 9 playing a 20 or something,
right, exactly.
and so I'm not a guy that thinks that you got to set it up where it's 1 and 2. But when you look at, this sectional complex and when you've got what would essentially be 8 of the top 10 teams on the same side, that's really hard. And I think, again, I think what that does is it takes out some of the nonsense when they do adjust for travel. Look, it's not a big advantage if you shift this team with this team,
Right.
where in some sectional complexes, or subsectionals rather, if one ends up playing a 6 instead of an 8, it's a big difference.
Right, yeah.
And I just don't think that you can do that. That's why I think that you need to protect 1 through 8. And again, I think that if you went to the full sectional complex, you'd have to find some hosts.
Yeah.
Like in 3A, look, they need to be on 57, and let that be the gathering point.
Right. But I mean, here's the thing: if you do it for one, you have to do it for all. And a lot of other ones would say we don't need that, and that'll kind of take away from the excitement a little bit. So again, it's a Pandora's box that you open it up. Okay, you can't put it back in, and this is what you get. And there's going to be complaints. One, you think it'll solve the issue, and instead it'll solve the one issue, but then you'll have 2 more that you didn't foresee happening.
So back to the seedings, and this is in the subsectionals that feed into the Tolono Unity sectional, and some of our schools to the north and east get sent this direction, and the top seed in the subsectional A is Lawrenceville, along with T-Town, Marshall, and Paris. Fairfield is a 5 seed. The Mules will be a host, as will the 4 seed Paris. So there will be some scrambling there as far as what seeds will go with that one. And subsectional B is these are schools mostly up in the Champaign area: Tolono Unity, St. Joe Ogden, Warrensburg, Latham, and Monticello. Your top 4 seeds in that one. And so that's again. Fairfield is a host, and so that gives them a chance. But with the 4 seed, also being a host, then that means that they're not going to get Lawrenceville, the top seed. So you're going to instead get T-Town and Marshall, which is no picnic either.
That's just a great consolation right there. But as I was saying with Chester hosting, and this is a different situation because Fairfield has been very solid all season. They've had their ups and downs, but they've been a pretty solid team. And I think they're starting to peak also right now. We talk about teams that are peaking. I think they're starting to hit their stride here. Getting to host a regional, it's going to be tough against T-Town and Marshall, but you get to be on your home floor. It's so much easier with a place that you've played several times that year. And again, if you're peaking, which it seems like the Mules might be, and Scott McElravy is a fantastic coach too, I would not be surprised either way.
And I think they may have got caught peeking ahead with North Clay in a midweek game. So our last sectional subsectionals with area teams in it. These are the teams that feed into the Marion sectional. Centralia got the top seed, which no surprise there. Mount Vernon beats Marion on Tuesday night, right before the seeding process. We kind of felt those 2 teams were neck and neck, and so Mount Vernon gets the 2 seed, Marion the 3, Heron is the 4. Now your 2 regional hosts are Carbondale and Effingham, the 6 and the 9 seed. So to me, the only mystery is who's going to get sent where. Is it, you got Centralia and Heron, are they going to get sent to Effingham, or are they going to get sent to Carbondale, or vice versa? Because you got Marion and Mount Vernon, and you've got an interstate, a straight shot. That's the only mystery to me when these pairings come out.
Well, and I mean, it's a similar situation with the 2As that we were talking about. Just, seems like one from both 1 and 4 and 2 and 3 will be happy, and the other one probably will not be as happy where they end up at. Mount Vernon probably could go either way, honestly.
Sure.
But the others probably will be sitting there saying, yay and oh no. But the Centralia Heron potential matchup is interesting to me. Centralia obviously the favorite, but I think Heron has the tools to perhaps pull off an upset there. Kyrie Slukin's, of course, one of the best basketball players we've got in the area, and I think that he could handle Centralia. It's just a matter of will his supporting cast be able to also stay up to speed with Centralia. I think that they have their moments, but that'll be a very interesting potential matchup. I hope they meet in a big, explosive, down-to-the-wire regional title game.
And when you look at it only being the 5 seed, you suspect that they would go with Centralia and Heron, and with Olney travel. They're not going to send only to Carbondale, so that may end up being pushing the ones that send them to Effingham, and so then you'd have Marion, Mount Vernon, and then Carbondale, the 2, 3, and the 6. So that would make sense, and then you figure out who else gets in. Mattoon, Charleston, Effingham, Salem round out the 10 teams in the subsectional. On the other side, Triad, the number 1 seed, Highland, the 2, East St. Louis, the 3, and Mascoutah, the 4. Highland and Waterloo, who is the 5th seed, are your 2 hosts. So that would appear that Triad, Mascoutah would end up going to Waterloo, with Highland, East St. Louis, and Civic Memorial going to Highland. And so again, we've talked last couple weeks. It's not, East St. Louis is not the dominant team like that we've seen. They get a 3 seed, and I'm maybe even a little surprised. Waterloo was the team that I thought might be a top 2 or 3 seed, and then they've kind of struggled here lately. Triad's been the most consistent all year, and obviously that shows them why they get the number 1 seed.
Well, Waterloo, headed into February, looked like they were for sure a 3 seed, if nothing else. But they have struggled. Meanwhile, Mascoutah has gone the complete opposite direction. They were on a 5 or 6 game losing streak, and then they beat Waterloo, and they've just been off to the races since. Right. 2 big wins. It was Waterloo and Murfreesboro, 24 hours apart. And seeing them play Murfreesboro, they have some fantastic kids. They seem to shoot lights out in that game. Daryl Murphy, after that game, was like, I was not expecting them to shoot the way they did. They hit 10 threes in that game, which is almost unheard of in almost any type of game. That was wild. They had a freshman that hit 5 of them. If they're all running on all cylinders, Mascoutah's a really tough team to beat. But Waterloo sitting at the 5 also is a very interesting case of, they could sneak up on someone because they went through a lull, but could they potentially find their way back is the question here in regional time. Well,
and I just think that this whole thing, and obviously Centralia has won 18 in a row, something like that.
Something like that.
But this doesn't feel like a dominant Centralia team. They're very good. Don't get me wrong. They're so solid. Most importantly, they know how to win and how to finish close games. But this whole sectional feels wide open.
It does, without a doubt. I mean, Mount Vernon Marion looks like probably the best potential matchup out of all this stuff. But even then, who knows? I mean, they played to double overtime last week, and they've still got another matchup on the books ready to go.
Right. So they played Tuesday night. That's double overtime. Mount Vernon win on a free throw by Marlon Price with no time left on the clock. So then they play next Friday in the regular season finale. Then they would play potentially in the regional final the following Friday. Yeah. So 3 meetings in 11 days?
Roughly,
and so
thanks, Ice Storm.
Yeah, and so now you're looking at 2 teams that certainly know each other really well, and the familiarity being that close is just going to ratchet that up even more.
And that kind of leads to the philosophical discussions of the seeing a team 3 times in a season thing. When it's that close, I have to wonder, okay, if say Mount Vernon picks up another win next Friday, do they have that edge, or does Marion actually have the edge? Like everyone says, you don't want to see a team 3 times after beating them twice because they'll get you. That's so close, it could be either that they hold it over their head, or if it's close enough, Marion might be like, we know what we need to do now.
And so it will be a very interesting next couple of weeks. Again, the girls playing the regional quarterfinals on Saturday. That starts tomorrow. The boys will play their regional quarterfinals on Monday the following week. So a little difference in schedule between the boys and the girls. And the way it shapes up for that week of the 24th, you got boys regionals on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Right. And then the girls' sectionals will be on Tuesday and Thursday. So makes it a little easier for guys like us to cover things and to keep things where we don't have to make decisions about, we're going to cover this one. There are enough decisions about what to cover because all 4 classes are playing at the same time. So that makes things a little squirrely and frustrating at times. But, again, it's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
So, well, that's going to do it for this edition of the River Radio Sports Central podcast, powered by our friends at NovaCare Rehabilitation. For Matty V, I'm Darren Kinnard. Have a great week, everybody, a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.